welcome back to Cafe Racer Garage. I'm Dan, and today we are working on the CB750 exhaust. Before I get stuck into actually doing the exhaust, I just wanted to explain, if you've seen any of my Instagram posts, this was what I was originally going to do, the pie cuts or lobster cuts, whatever you want to call them. I had originally done these just as a mock-up to try and get the shape that I wanted, and the more I looked at them, the more I was trying to get a bit of an idea on how I wanted it to work and look. It was looking really busy. It was a little bit too much for this build. Wasn't the look that I was after. So what I ended up doing was doing this, which I pretty much placed the first two pipes in the position that I want them. It basically is a bend that comes down to here and then a bend that goes to here. So what I'm doing here, instead of having pie cuts, is I'm going to have the complete opposite. I'm going to go with the most minimal amount of welding possible, so that this just a nice sweep flow. Pie cuts are just going to have to wait for another build, and I'm really looking forward to doing the pie cuts, don't get me wrong. I just feel like, you know, I have to sacrifice doing them to get the look that I'm after, and this is the look that I'm after. So I've set up the two pipes coming down into here, into the 4 junction, and then I've obviously got to do the other two. Now, things I've got to look out for, if you're going to do an exhaust like this as well, you've got to build it so you can take it off, obviously. So whatever's going to be in the way, just remember you've got to have your bolts here. The whole thing has to come back and out, which usually means sometimes you can turn the wheel and you can get it out that way. The other things you've got to take into consideration is servicing. So with this model here, you can see the oil filter sits right there, which I need to leave enough room for that to be able to be removed without having to move the entire exhaust to just change the oil filter. That would be an absolute nightmare. It could be done, you know, it's only bolts really. The other thing is obviously a sump. In this model here, if you can just see where my finger is here, poking up, that's where it is. The sump bolt is right here, which means I can still access this with the socket once I, do the exhaust complete. So I can still drop the oil, change the oil filter, and as you can see, the other two pipes will come down. One will go into here and the other one will go into there. So the other thing to keep in mind when you're building an exhaust is obviously the height off the ground, because speed bumps and gutters and things that you're going to go over. This one is sitting roughly at time of build is around 110 millimeters. I think that's 110 there. I can't quite see with the camera in the way, but give or take. And that is probably going to go up a little bit more, because once this build is done, I'm going to probably push it up and then put the bracket in so that it's lifted ever so slightly. If you are looking at doing an exhaust like this out of mild steel, or like I'm doing with stainless, there is a kit that I put together on my website. Go and check it out. I'll leave a link to my website in the description below. I've done a kit with obviously the straight pipe as well as a bunch of bends for you to pretty much do what I'm doing right now and make your own exhaust. So also what you'll find on my website is a company that makes pie cuts, pre-cut and cleaned in stainless, ready to roll. All you got to do is pull them out of the packaging and just tack them together, and you can make whatever shape, size, bend you want. They're really cool. If you're looking at doing pie cuts and you don't want to go through the whole process of cutting them yourself, that's definitely an avenue to go. So that's one of their kits there. They pretty much just have all pre-packaged, nicely sealed up, cleaned, ready to roll. One of the things with welding stainless, if you don't know, is that you need these things to be absolutely bang on clean. If you're welding and you've got a little bit of dirt on there and you're trying to TIG, it'll just go to rubbish really fast. So the best thing to do once you've got your packet of these guys, or if you decide to cut your own, is lay them out, and the best way to hold them together is just with some masking tape. Just get a little square of masking tape on each side, and that'll keep it in place so you can run a tack on it. When I was doing these ones, I put them in a vise just to trial that, to see how that went, but honestly the masking tape works way better just to hold it in place. You just got to get them nice and flush. So that's pie cuts. Like I said, I will do a pie cut exhaust on another build, but just not for this one. you've got a keen eye and you've noticed these little guys here, these are my design. You'll only find them on my website. They're available for, at the moment, for the CB750 and also the CX500, the Hondas. So once this engine is all painted and everything, it's going to really just stand out. I love these. I think they just look so clean compared to the original Honda ones. So with these guys here on the CB750, you will have to weld a little retainer to keep them on the end of the actual pipe there to push them in. Those will be available as well. If you just want to use the original exhaust and chop it about here, you can just weld your new piece to this and then slip these guys on, and then obviously either create your own exhaust or modify yours that you have currently at the moment on the standard Honda one. So if you watched any of my videos, you'll know that I'm a little bit of a perfectionist when it comes to building stuff, creating this kind of thing. And these two here that come down, they are quite nice. They're a nice flow. Whereas as you can see, this guy here, I just kind of put it in place. When you're sitting on a certain angle, it looks good, but when you stand back and look at it from a different angle, it might not look so good, which that doesn't. It clears what I need it to clear, but it's too sharp of a turn, a bend just here. So I'm gonna have to tidy that up. Just taped a little bit of TIG wire here just on the side of the oil filter, so that while I'm building this one, I don't come inside that line, so it will be on the outside, so then I'll know I'll be able to actually get that filter out. Sometimes the little gaps like this you can't quite get to give a tack on the back, so you've got to get a little bit crafty on how you're going to close it up. And so what I've come up with is just this little bit of pipe here. What I'm going to do is pretty much slide over the top and then just use my body and press on it, sort of like this, I guess, while I'm just giving it a tack, and that'll hold it in place. So how you actually install these things, before you fully weld them out, just do a tack on both sides, and that'll keep it in place and nice and secure. So when you're actually fitting up your exhaust, you know that there's not going to be any movement here. There is a tiny bit of play here for it to slide perfectly over the tube. And what you do is you're fully welded inside here. So leave a bit of I guess, maybe a few mil, 2-3 mil, where my fingernail is there. So that gives you the ability to fill that up with a bit of weld and then just grind it flush, and that will pretty much ensure that the seal is perfect when you hits hard up against the gasket. So quite often when I'm building or fabricating something, I have an idea in my head on how I want it to turn out, and then through that creative process you have other ideas and things might not turn out the way you want them to, which is exactly like this exhaust system. I have tried about 3 different designs or styles on what I wanted, because I was trying to do a 4-into-1 and I just wasn't happy with any of them, and I just kind of scrapped that whole idea, and now I've done pretty much 2-into-1 on both sides to keep it really even looking, and it gives me the ability to have all of those servicing areas, so obviously the filter and the sump at the bottom, but it just kept it, I think it just makes it look better. Like it's even on both sides. Going from one side now and then the other, you can see that it's exactly the same. Obviously I still need to work on this piece here, and then obviously the muffler, but there's going to be essentially a muffler on either side now. I had this pipe here pretty much bent, and then I had to bend this one to sort of mimic that one, and then I had 2 bent pipes and 2 non-bent pipes, and it just didn't look right. It just looked out of place to me. So now they're all pretty much even, and it's going to look really good, really uniform, really finished. I'm happy with how it's turned out. It's taken a bit of time, but realistically, the amount of welding that I'm going to do in this is going to be minimal, as minimal as you can. There's 4 here, 1, 2, 3, 4 across there, and then there's a few pie cuts down here. So what I've done here essentially is on the inside pipes, I've done a few pie cuts. There's literally 1, 2, 3 pie cuts there on each side, and there's going to be a few that do the bend to go up there for the muffler, and that's it. So minimal welding. I think it looks really clean, and it's going to look awesome once it's done. And if you don't know, stainless, once it heats up and goes through that whole process, they get a really cool color. So looking at it from this angle, it actually looks pretty damn tough as is without even putting mufflers on it. It's not what I'm going for. I'm definitely going to use mufflers. I mean, I have to baffle these if I was going to leave it as is, because it would be stupidly loud. Has been a bit of time gone into actually designing it and then redesigning it, but it follows the frame perfectly, as you can see. So those lines are what I was chasing. Really clean looking is another thing that I wanted. So yeah, once the mufflers go on, obviously a little bit of a return pipe here in the larger diameter, and then a bit of a muffler on both sides, and then we're good to go. So a quick little tip here if you decide to do pie cuts is work out the size of the tube that you're using and then halve it. Once you've got that measurement, go and get yourself a bit of steel or timber or aluminium, whatever you have that's nice and straight, and then cut it to the size of half the pipe. I'll show you what to do next. So once you've got your tube, lay it down on something completely flat, and then get the bit of timber or whatever you've cut to that measurement and put it straight up against the side, and then just get a marker and as simply just making a mark all the way across. Don't move the pipe, leave it as is. Make sure it doesn't move, and if it does, then you'll have to start again. But then just transfer that to the other side, and then you'll have a perfect mark on both sides equally, so that once you start cutting your pie cuts, all you have to do is just go 180 each time, just spin it backwards and forwards, and you're done, and that's it. This here will be pretty much put on the saw, so it gives me something to reference off. So I'll just put that up against the saw like that, clamp it down, so that each time I come back I can just line it up with that bit of timber and know that it's going to be perfectly 180 each time. Hopefully that makes sense. Cool little tip, but that's the way I do it. I'm sure there's plenty of other ways to do it, but that works for me. So this is what I mean by having that reference point. This here can be glued on, screwed on, clamped on, whatever, but it gives you that reference to know that each time you spin it 180 degrees, you know that you're going to be even on both sides, and it's just nice and simple. So pick whatever angle you want your pie cuts at, and then cut one, spin it, cut it, done. Perfect pie cut each time. I mean, ultimately a bandsaw is probably better than a cold cut saw or even a abrasive saw, because they're just so smooth and they're always even. These things have a tendency to cut the pie cut, and then if the blade ends up touching that pie cut again, it'll pick it up and just throw it like a million miles an hour. Trust me, it's happened a few times already. And you'll lose teeth on the blade and everything. So just be mindful of that. Putting a stop up against this as you push the piece of tube through is going to stop that bit of tube falling out, so therefore the blade has more of a tendency to grab it. So try not to use a stop if you can. Just do a mark on somewhere on the wherever you can down here, so that you just push it up to that point, get up to the mark, and then be done with it rather than having a stopper. So that's pretty much how they come off the saw. You will probably need to give them a bit of a tickle with some sanding paper or file or whatever you have. I've got a belt grinder, so I'll use that nice and quick. But as you can see with those lines that I've done, if you can keep them on there, it's probably better to use something like a scribe so that it scratches into it, so they're there permanently whilst you're setting this up, because then you can sort of get a reference point to wherever you want them to go, if that makes any sense. Just a quick little tip here, if you do decide to do this and you've got a few to do, use some vice grips or pliers or something to hang on to it, because for one reason they do get hot, especially if you've got a bit of cleaning up to do. Saves you burning your fingers or having to dip it into water every 5 seconds. And the other thing is, you know, you don't have to worry about giving yourself a manicure, so you can just work a lot faster. You can just really, you know, nail those out, spin it around as I was doing, and go the other side. Ensure you give them a really good clean with some acetone, just so that any of that sticky residue from the tape doesn't foul you up when you try and weld these out. Best to do it straight after you've tacked it, so then you know it's done. And that's pretty much it, just a nice little tack pretty much on all of them, on both sides, and that'll ensure it's not going anywhere. Sometimes you just need to get a little bit creative in the way you get these things together. Obviously I tacked on one side and then the other side opened quite a bit. So in order to close it, I needed to come up with some way to, you know, I guess close it up, and I just used a bit of weight. Like you can see there, it worked perfectly. To answer that question, for anybody who's going to ask me what welder I'm using, this is the guy here. This is my TIG welder. Now I use this in a lot of my videos to do any of the TIG work that you see me do. I love this little thing. It's actually the Sigweld WeldSkill 205 AC/DC welder. Sigweld is actually an ESAB brand. ESAB's quite common around the globe. Sigweld is available in Australia and New Zealand, and this little guy here packs a punch. It is only a small unit. I think it only weighs like 12 kilos or something, and it's actually quite small in its size. I think it came with an actual shoulder strap, so you can, it's quite mobile. Not that I need to worry about that because it's all set up on this guy. If you're also looking for a MIG welder, before we continue, I've done a review on this guy here. It's completely automatic. It's amazing. If you haven't seen that video, go and check it out. It's the 185 Ultra MIG welder, 3-in-1. Anyway, getting back to this, if you have no clue about welding and you want to get yourself a TIG welder, the easiest way I can explain this to you and the best way to remember it is AC/DC. If you're going to do mild steel and stainless, get something that's DC. But if you want to do anything with aluminium, you have to have the AC. So basically it's the easy way to remember. A for aluminium, done. So you just know that you can get something that's going to weld aluminium for you. But the control in this machine is what I love. Just some of the things you can control on this machine without going into too much depth is post and pre-flow. You can control that because the gas is something you want to control if you are doing stuff like stainless. You obviously have your up and down slope and also your hot start. This machine also does stick welding, so it comes with a handpiece for stick, and also your 2T, your 4T, and also pulse. Pulse is something I haven't really had a chance to play with yet on this machine, but it is something that I would like to do, and I'll probably make a video when I do that because it'd be kind of cool. So for anyone who wants to know, I'm actually welding at 55 amps on this machine here, and the wall thickness of the tube that I'm using is 1.6 thick. But one thing I do want to mention on this machine is the actual handpiece, because that's kind of cool too. So this is the handpiece it comes with. It's pretty cool. It has the adjustability up here as well as the start and stop, and this entire piece comes off, I'm assuming to replace it in case it gets damaged at all, which is kind of cool. So the button's obviously completely replaceable. The really cool thing about this entire handpiece is the fact that you have the flexi head, so you can get it in some of those really tight places. As you can see, I've changed the back cap as well as the cup on this. Now that's a Furic cup. I want to thank Furic for sending me these through. I've just put them in this little container here so I know what sizes are what, but thank you so much Furic for sending those cups through. But you'll normally get, in the entire pack for the welder, you'll get these guys, so you've got the back cap as well as all the different cups and stuff to go with it, as well as a few tungstens. So my honest opinion about this machine, and I guess the one little nitpicky thing that I wish this machine came with in the box, is a foot pedal. I wish this machine had one, because quite often when I'm working on something, I want to be right up close to the work so that I have a lot of control in my welding, yet you can't quite get that when you're back here. I guess that's the one thing, having a foot pedal would be quite an advantage, because you can hold this like a pencil and you get a lot of control. So that is probably my only small thing that I wish this machine came with, but you can't have everything. So if you're looking for a welder though, this thing is awesome. I highly recommend it. if you're in Australia or New Zealand, obviously if you're outside of those places, look at the ESAB brand because they are obviously the parent company. So what I'm about to do now is weld on this ring to the exhaust pipe. This is both stainless, and when you're welding stainless, it needs to be super clean. I've run the bike so you can see all the black stuff on the inside there, so I need to clean that off before I start that bead that goes all the way around the inside. So what I'm going to do is use my old trusty toothbrush and a bit of thinner, primer thinner, acetone, aka, and then just clean that right up. And once that's clean, then I can get a nice bead of weld through there. It's not going to matter too much because obviously you're not going to see that, but you want to try and get your welds as good as you can so there's no holes. So it is finally finished. This thing has taken me so long to do because I've changed my design so many times, and now I'm really happy with how it is. I'm glad I changed my design. I'm glad I went with a totally different setup than what I was originally going to do. I've kept it as clean as possible, and what I mean by that is there's minimal welding. There's only welding where there needs to be, and I could even get rid of that if I wanted to. So basically there's no welds all the way through these pipes, only to here. This is the only weld there and there on the whole system, but there is a join all the way through all 4 of these pipes here. There's also some pie cuts down through the 2 internal pipes, but they're completely gone. I've made this so it looks nice and clean, so it almost looks like they were like made for this bike. They were bent that shape. That was the design look that I wanted. I could have done pie cuts through the entire thing. I just went away from that idea because I wanted something clean that looks like that, and I'm stoked. The only thing left to do now is I do need to put a bracket somewhere at the back here on this side and also on the other side, and then a joining piece between the two to equalize the 2 pipes. I don't know how I'm going to do that yet, but let's see how it sounds. I guess that's the next step, really. The mufflers are on. The mufflers still need a clamp. They're just pretty much really tight fitted on there at the moment. However, let's fire it up and see what it sounds like at the moment before I do that cross piece between the 2. I won't do that in this video, that'll be done at a later stage. I just wanted to show you what I've done because this has been a process that's taken me a while, and I really wanted to show you where I'm at right now. If you are going to build yourself a custom exhaust system like this, I do have this same size diameter tube available in stainless and mild steel on my website as a kit, so you can just buy it and just make it how you want. These things here are also available. These are the CNC made custom flanges on the CB750s, this model. You will need the actual weld-on stainless ring, which are also available on the website, which I'll leave a link to it just here. So yeah, that's pretty much how it's going to sit. And also later down the track, the exhaust mufflers will be available as well. So look out for those. As these things come available, I will be emailing anyone who's on the subscriber list. So make sure you go to the website, punch your email in there, so when the new products come through, you'll actually get notified. But yeah, for now, let's get this thing fired up and see what it sounds like. So that was certainly a lot louder than I was expecting. Sorry neighbors, I didn't run it for very long, only like 3 minutes or something, and you can see it's already started to get that nice golden effect on the actual pipes there, and it's only been run for a short time. So that's going to be pretty cool when it's all pretty much nice and golden. There was some popping and carrying on, which you heard. That was, I think it was probably caused by the cross rings. The cross rings are still the original ones, the ones that go up here, just on the head. So I need to replace all those with new ones, and hopefully that'll fix that popping and carrying on. But I mean, the carburetors are only being bench sunk. So therefore they need to be done properly tuned, obviously, when this thing's running at its best. And I might put a bit of a baffle in the tube down here just to sort of take out that top end bark. I don't think, well, for one, it's probably not legal, and for two, it is quite loud. It's sort of hard to pick up on a microphone, but it is, yeah, it's up there. So I'm really looking forward to actually joining these two pipes up and equalizing them to try and see if that makes any difference to the sound or tone of the exhaust system. If you've done that and it did make a difference for you, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to know. But I do have a question for everyone today. If you had no rules about how loud your exhaust system could be, would you have loud pipes or not? And also leave me what sort of bike you have or what you're working on right now. I'd love to know. It really helps me understand you guys, because obviously you guys see me all the time, but I really have no clue what you guys actually have. Or you may not even have a bike. So just write, I don't have a bike right now, but I'm looking at getting whatever. Or if you're not even into bikes and you just like watching, just say, just love watching your videos, Dan. Oh yeah, just before I go, anyone who wants to get exclusive content from me, I do have a Patreon page. I'll leave a link to that in the description below for you. Catch you later.